Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. And brilliant presentation. Thank you very much. Good to see and to understand the new plans of ITV. And I'm happy to see that we share some common beliefs about the market. So as Jonathan mentioned, I would like to take you now a little bit away from the streaming side to more the OS side, and why we believe that the OS is the new gateway for, oh, here it is, for the streaming services, but also for device manufacturers. But before I get there, just let me briefly introduce our company, because I'm pretty sure that some of you have never heard about Foxum before. Foxum is a company we started in 2008 by making the big mistake of developing or trying to develop hardware. So it was a time where we started to develop set-top boxes right after one of the co-founders watched the very first keynote from Steve Jobs and had this great idea coming back to the office that we could put applications into a set-top box. We spent about 3 times more money and time that we planned back then, and then we decided to sell that business and carved out everything we learned from the OS side, or back then the App Store side, and created Foxum out of it. And our main business, core business, remains until today to develop customized smart TV or CTV solutions, now shifting into an own OS, but also since 2014 develop applications for many broadcasters, SVODs and AVODs globally to be on CTVs. And then something happened, and that's the main topic that I would like to talk about with you today. It's in 2019-20, we realized that the business model we built, we planned to have integrated in Foxum and make revenues with, changed a lot, and saw that the market only moved to the way of monetizing content and monetizing viewing time through content. So the model shifted heavily from charging a license fee per device from our device manufacturers to monetizing the viewing time. So these are the 4 core pillars that we have at Foxum today, and I'm just going to touch 2 of them today, the CTV OS operating system and our own AVOD and FAST service as an example to explain the impact the OS has on the streaming services. Just some references that we have from the market, and then here the user interface of our own service. Now actually coming to the actual topic of today. So we believe that the CTV OS is a great opportunity nowadays and the silent media disruptor that we see. So don't be scared by this. I actually only had 2 days to prepare these slides. But what we try to do here is we try to basically on 1 page show the history of TV and what it means for streaming services. I'm being very blunt in saying that 90 years the TV actually never changed. So still today we don't see much innovation until the TV got connected. What do we mean by that? We still use this device to watch audio and video files. Of course, there have been some technological advancement that you can see from the 1930s all the way to the 2000s, but it was all driven by price. So price was #1 factor for the device manufacturers to compete with each other. So the know-how switched and moved from the actual TV brands all the way to the component suppliers. And then in the early 2020s, and end of 2010s maybe, something happened. Way after the internet was invented, much slower than we anticipated, the TVs got smarter. And basically the simple addition of an internet connection changed and keeps changing the entire device, but also the media and the advertisement industries. So we see all of a sudden new players in the market. We see companies like Roku, Google, and Amazon who went into this business, who never had anything to do with consumer electronics before, offering an own OS, but also offering own streaming services to one extent. And I have a slide after it to go into more detail about it. And we also see that for the advertisement space, big changes have happened. Before the TVs got smart, the business model was quite straightforward. There were the pay TV operators who used the set-top box at the gate as a gatekeeper in the living room, and then we had the broadcasters who were the ones who were in charge of monetizing the viewing time, let's say. And now we see many other players going into the market and trying to create what we call an integrated system. An integrated system for us, it's a big change in the market. It is, when we look at, like, the table is maybe divided into two parts. It's the top three and the lower three, and us in the middle, and then four pillars of what I'm trying to explain right now. So when you look at the new players, what we call the giants, without naming them one by one all the time, they have come into the market at a time when most of the TVs were still dumb. They were unconnected, but they had an HDMI connector. And through this HDMI connector, it was very easy to develop a very cost-efficient dongle or small set-top box and sell it at a much lower price than you would usually sell a new TV for to the market. So obviously, it boomed, especially in big and economically strong markets like the US, gained a lot of market share very rapidly. But then at some point, it plateaued. It plateaued because TV makers made a move by integrating more and more CTV technology, OSs, or app stores back then, into their own hardware. So whenever people were trying to renew the TV set, they, instead of buying a new dongle, bought a new CTV. And then they thought, okay, wow, that's a change. So in the second pillar, they said, okay, then what can we do? And Roku is the perfect and very good example for us in the industry, the leader, in my opinion, in this, by saying, okay, the next move would be, no need to produce our own dongles anymore. Why don't we carve out our OS, which we call the Roku OS, and make agreements with the TV manufacturers? And they went to many big brands that we know globally and started co-branding their TVs. So nowadays, you still find a lot of TVs called TCL Roku TV or a Hisense Google TV or Android TV. That worked quite well. So Google and Amazon did the same, carved out their system, made a lot of deals with TV manufacturers to increase their market share locally and globally. All for the sake of this year. And coming back to our topic right now, the streaming services, everybody understood, and Roku was the first example, to say that money, income, turnover, however you want to say it, in future in TV or in media will come over monetization of the, preferably in your own streaming services. So they created the Roku channels, which is a huge success. And the latest number that I just read, I think last week, is that Roku now, if I'm not mistaken, around $42 US per year per device. If you take it with an average lifetime of a device of 5 years, I'm pretty confident to say, with my background in consumer electronics, that no CE manufacturer ever makes that kind of a margin on a hardware. So they were a good example of why it is the best way to have an integrated strategy. If you have a lot of capital and cash, you could also integrate your own original content, which Amazon also did recently by purchasing and acquiring MGM to close the circle. And the bottom three brands that you see here, they are just three examples, and you gave the example from Samsung as well before, and I have the exact same opinion, that they were not happy with what's happening because they are coming from the CE background, and they had a very good life. Many content providers and streaming services had to come to them and pay them a fee to be on the platform, to be in the living room, to reach the audience. And that's what I mean by the header of this presentation today, that everybody understands today that the CTV OS, no matter where it comes from, who makes it, is the new gatekeeper for many streaming services to reach the audience in the living room. And then they did exactly the same, and I don't know if you are aware of it, big companies like LG and Samsung or Hisense, they're carving out now their own system called Tizen, WebOS, and whatever, and they're also giving it to other TV brands just for the sake of increasing their market share globally, again, to monetize their streaming services. And Samsung did actually something very smart. I just remembered when you showed us the picture is, whenever you open a Samsung TV, and I'm pretty sure that many of you own one, Didn't do anything. It's back. It starts with, not with the linear channels anymore, it starts directly in what we call Samsung TV Plus. So automatically you diverted all the traffic by switching on the telly to your own services. It's a battlefield. It's a very fragmented battlefield. These are a little bit outdated numbers from 2020, but what you can see here, it's very different from mobile. And that's why the war, and that's why my colleague from ITV just said that, is there's just so many different players out there in the world who are all competing for the same hours, for the same audience in the living room. And when you look at it, there is like, and that's what many people don't know, is that almost half of the market, that's 100 million TVs every year, use an operating system that is not a branded system like Android, Roku, etc. They make really opportunistic decisions on which solution they want to use, and they all come to players that are independent and say, hey guys, I don't make any money on electronics anymore. How do I participate on the monetization on the smart side of things? And I think that's the key. The key for any streaming service, including also the device manufacturers, is to finding an independent, strong, fair partner that delivers an OS with a viewing time mechanism, an own AVOD and FAST service. That's our belief will be the future, like many of you, and have them participate in the revenues if they want to grow. And that's why there will be always a balance, and there will be always a more fragmented landscape than compared to mobile technology, for example. Here, what is essential is that actually, for the first time in history, we witness that, and that's why I talk so much about device and streaming service, etc., that all of us are in the same boat. All of us, for the first time, have to somehow acquire some of the revenues which is generated over viewing time. Because I explained earlier, the TV brands have no chance of making money from hardware other than waiting for the next big technological advancement. Manufacturers, even worse, they work with very small margins. Streaming services also are in competition now with new entrants like the big guys, the giants, who have their own services, and obviously also ad agencies, because they're also making the switch from the traditional to OTT. And we dare to say, and make a bold statement to say that CTV eats streaming services at the moment. We see this quite strongly with the examples that I just gave, and it will happen in future as well, and the market will, to some extent, also shrink. Naturally, by, for example, combining 4 ITV apps into one, which is a great idea, or just because they cannot survive the competition that's in the market. This is just a little bit of an example and calculation about why we believe that the CTV OS is the most important tool to monetize viewing time in partnership with the streaming services. When you look at the traditional broadcast, you know that much better than we do. It's a traditional way of monetization through advertisement, through pay TV subscription, and that will sooner or later all shift to CTV. A little bit slower than we anticipated in the beginning, but the trend is going. And the future of having a connected TV allows the TV to become a monetization tool for everyone involved: streamers, brand owners, and ad agencies. I'll just give you one example on how we do it, similar to the Samsung example. There are some rules we cannot, at the moment, pass by, like premium positioning for really strong SVOD services, for example. But we can use the direct neighborhood of these services to give a preferred position to big partners or to own streaming services, just like Roku, Amazon, and Google are doing, for example. So in a nutshell, that's it. I just wanted to give you a brief different point of view from the OS side, from a company that's coming from the OS side and not from the streaming side, to explain our point of view on the future of CTV OS and how we see the streaming services and the CTV OS, whoever they are, in closer cooperation in future than they are today. Thank you very much.